Thank you very much. We're really pleased and honored to be here this evening to talk to you a bit about the Canadian Cancer Survivor Network. This organization was created at the end of 2011 by a group of concerned cancer patients from who had several different cancers, also some family members and also some individuals who were from cancer families where they were very much at risk of developing either breast or prostate cancer because of genetic factors. We worked very hard to create the organization, and then last summer we were fortunate enough to have a student project where we hired 4 students to actually create our website with us. So our website launched in June of 2012. And we had, at the same month, we rented an office, a fairly small office in the West End. And we launched the office in October with Mayor Jim Watson and nearly 100 other people in attendance. So it was a great send-off for us. At the same time, we were busy creating partnerships. We currently have partnerships with about 30 other organizations. In Ottawa, but across the country, and also a few overseas and in the United States. This is something that we are building as time goes on. We love to collaborate with other organizations on various projects. We also have a medical advisory committee, which is slowly growing. We are probably one of the only cancer groups in Canada to actually work with individuals and organizations in provinces and territories where elections are being held to formulate with them what are their issues about healthcare and cancer, and then to write questions to get feedback again from the groups and then send them out to the political parties and to all the candidates. So far, last year we did Alberta and Quebec. We also did the Ontario and federal Liberal leadership campaigns, and we're going to try to do as many leadership campaigns as we can, mainly to raise awareness for those running as leaders of political parties across the country. We're doing British Columbia. We just today sent out questions to the parties. The questions relate to healthcare and cancer care services in the provinces and territories. We also do federal elections, so in 2015, we'll be doing the federal election. Normally, we have questions about issues like approval of drugs being such an issue across the country, and the patchwork coverage that we have for cancer drugs and other drugs. We also have in the past asked questions about lymphedema, which is undertreated and also which costs a lot of money when people do need to have it treated. Sometimes we've asked questions about specific healthcare issues. In Alberta a few years ago, the government decided that the whole province would be one health district. Now, we know what problems there are with health districts anyway in getting equitable services across the province, but imagine if a province the size of Alberta had one health district, what kinds of problems that created. The healthcare workers hate it, so it was one of the things that they wanted us to ask during the election in Alberta. We send, as well as to the parties themselves, we send the questions to the candidates because we want to raise awareness among a group of people who, after all, are movers and shakers in their own communities. Otherwise, they wouldn't be running for office. So even though many of them don't answer, we still want them to know what the issues of many of their constituents are. And the next thing that we do, and many of you will be familiar with this because we just asked prostate cancer patients and survivors to fill out 2 surveys. We are a registered patient advocacy group for the Pan-Canadian Drug Oncology Review, which reviews all new cancer drugs in Canada and makes recommendations to the provinces and territories about whether they should be approved. We have done 4. 1 breast cancer, 2 prostate cancer, and 1 lung cancer, all drugs for metastatic cancers. I was talking about partnering previously. Well, we actually partnered with Lung Cancer Canada on our submission for the metastatic lung cancer drug, and it made it a very powerful submission to come from 2 organizations. We've also done 1 common drug review submission, and that was on chemo-induced nausea and vomiting drug, which is so important to all those going through chemo. Some of you may be participating in our advocacy webinars. We are running a series of 8 webinars. 2 have already happened. March was on who does what in government, because it can be very confusing when the federal government has responsibilities for health, but in the end, it's the provinces and territories who deliver health care in this country. Last night, we had a webinar on the drug approval process in Canada, which again is a very complex system. Both of these are available in archived versions, so that if you want to have a look at them later, pick up my card and send me an email, and I'll send you the place to go on our website to find them. There are 2 more planned before summer. The May 22nd one will be about how patients and survivors and families concerned about cancer can help shape the healthcare agenda. Also, many of you may be familiar with our patient and caregiver volunteer advocacy survey. I am making a presentation to the Canadian Association of Psychosocial Oncology conference next week, and the topic I chose was to look at what impact on patients and survivors and family members and caregivers being involved in advocacy had on how they felt about themselves. And so we designed a survey. I'm pleased to say that as of just before I left tonight, there were 42 completed surveys. So we hope to have a really good idea of how people feel once they've been doing advocacy. I will be doing that presentation. A summary of it will also appear on our website. And I just met with Our Voice yesterday, and they have asked for a 1-page article on it for the June edition. So it looks like it'll get quite a bit of publicity. And I want to thank all of those in PCCN Ottawa who took the time to fill out that survey. This is an area that when I looked for research on this particular issue, I couldn't find any. They had a lot of information online about the impact of yoga, music, art therapy, and all other kinds of activities on cancer patients and how cancer patients felt, but I couldn't find anything about advocacy. So we may be actually doing something that's groundbreaking. We had a Queen's Park legislative breakfast to raise awareness about metastatic prostate cancer, and there were metastatic patients and caregivers and other family members attending that. It was very well received by the MLAs at Queen's Park, and we were lucky we got it in less than 2 weeks before the hosts very unexpectedly rose. We are working on a Bad to the Bone public awareness campaign to raise awareness about bone metastases and how, even if you have bone metastases, to try and stay as healthy as possible and how you can do this. We're combining breast and prostate cancer patients in this campaign, and the first meeting will be held on June 30th in Toronto. It will be a webinar that will be broadcast in Toronto, Calgary, and Vancouver. There will be opportunity for other people to get involved after that meeting, and if anyone is interested, let me know, because we will be doing a lot of work on this right through June and probably in the fall again. We've done presentations at the World Cancer Congress, and that was a bit of a unique experience because a lot of us found out when we received information that we were accepted, we were very excited, and then sort of a bit consternated that we were given 3-minute presentations. And I'll tell you that with 3 slides, 3 minutes, and the mic went off and the light went off if you weren't finished. And then, as I said, we're doing the conference of the Canadian Association of Psychosocial Oncology. Some of you may have seen the 3 videos we have on YouTube about chemo-induced nausea and vomiting and how horrendous that is if people going through chemo don't have access to the drugs. So we did a public campaign about that, and we are still working on that to raise awareness and to ensure that people get the meds that they need to stop the nausea and vomiting at the same time or just before they're getting chemo, because we found that sometimes people are getting access to it after they've had 1 or 2 treatments and they're already quite ill. We've done a media campaign, and this is on the media release is on our website, on the impact of prostate cancer treatment on sexuality among men. And I think this is an issue which is really just starting to be discussed. I know, having worked in breast cancer, that it's only about 7 or 8 years ago that women actually started talking the impact of having a mastectomy or having breast cancer surgery and then radiation and chemotherapy on how they felt about their bodies and issues with body image and so forth. So it's really great that men are starting to talk about how their treatment impacts them. 2 things we're in the process of doing, and they're not yet public on our website. One is the creation of an asbestos, lung cancer, and mesothelioma primer on our website, where we will contain a lot of information. We already have people who have the disease writing personal stories for our blog. We're working with a group in the States that is providing 1 a month, 1 story a month. So that is a really positive outcome so that people don't feel so alone. I was astounded when I went to the World Congress to find out that over 100,000 people worldwide are still dying every year from asbestos-related causes, and that certainly is a cancer and an illness that can be prevented. We also are working on the creation of an improved section on prostate cancer on our website, and we'll certainly be letting you know when we're ready to launch that, as well as the other groups across the country. We have 3 advisory councils, prostate, breast, and asbestos. These councils, and I won't go through all of this, it may look a bit formal, but what it boils down to is that we want the work that we do to be driven by patients, caregivers, survivors, family members, and healthcare professionals working in oncology. We want what we put on our website and what we choose to do to involve patients. When we go, for example, to see MPs or MLAs across the country, we would love to go with at least 1 patient because your experience is the valid experience you have. Walk the talk, and what you are the experts on your illness in terms of the impact on you every day while you're going through the illness and treatment for it, and then dealing with the new normal of having had cancer. So anyone who's interested in working with us, we've been on the Hill visiting MPs recently, and we have 2 more to go in the next week or so. I'd love to have company. So basically, the last slide, which I'll just flip to, is our contact information. We are on, obviously, we have a website. We have a blog, and we will soon have an asbestos, second blog on asbestos. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're about to be on Pinterest as soon as we can figure out how to get all the pictures we have up. What I'd like to do right now is go back to the previous slide and to ask Mona to come up and speak about it. Mona is the secretary-treasurer of our board of directors and is a gonzo HR person in the office and also works on fundraising and has been instrumental in us being able to do as much as we've been able to do. Mona.
Thank you. I'm not going to speak for very long. I could give you my very short bio. I've been in healthcare as an executive in nonprofit administering charities for quite a number of years, and I've been head of the Leukemia Research Fund of Canada. I've been head of the Ontario Division of Arthritis and worked with Jackie in breast cancer, and now we're working in all cancers together. I see that this slide isn't very readable. I had a lot of trouble with it, but what I'm trying to do here is pull together how it all works, and the top parts are the inputs, what we count on coming into us so we could do our work, and that includes the support groups like prostate cancer, breast cancer support groups, ovarian cancer has support groups. So these are hundreds of groups across the country where the individuals in those support groups who want to do advocacy or are interested in some of the activities we do can join with us. It doesn't mean that they're not in their groups or that we want to run their groups. If individuals from all those groups can give us quite a force and can be a liaison between us and what we're doing and their support groups. Then we have partner groups. Jackie mentioned a number of them where we work with other groups, and she mentioned we worked with Lung last week on doing a drug approval submission, and we could be working with any number of the groups. We're at 30 now, but that will keep growing. Then another input is our medical advisory committee that we count on to keep us straight about our website and the information there, and who we also count on to do specific things for us as needed, inform our drug review submissions and a number of other things. Our advisory councils, some of you may know about the prostate one, there's breast and what's the other one? The asbestos one. We do that's where people can get really active, and there's no fee to join, or there's no obligation. But if you want to be on an advisory council, you just let us know, and we call upon people to come with us on the Hill or come to a legislative breakfast or parliamentary breakfast. We've had a new perk that was very, very well received, where a publisher asked us if we'd like to start reviewing various cancer books, and we had, what was the first one was breast, and was there a prostate one? No. Well, the first one was breast cancer, so we put a call out to our Breast Cancer Advisory Council and had a huge number of people who wanted to review the book. And we will be getting prostate cancer books as well. So if you want to have a go at that, you should join and you get to keep the book. If you're a member of our council and you want to review one, you'll get to review it and you get to keep it. So we found that's going to be an interesting perk as well. No one's doing that. So all these are inputs, and we could be working with somebody from a support group and somebody from a partner group or somebody from an advisory council and one of our medical boards at the same time. Those 4 boxes on the top, and you can see them more clearly if you pick up a copy of the presentation. So it could be any combination of people working together with us at any given time on a project. And then outputs are at the bottom. The things that are important to us are participation, a voice, awareness, and change. And those are the things that happen when those people work together. And our little slogan is nothing about us without us, because we're finding, though there are some existing government bodies that welcome or make place for patient voices, the ones that exist right now, their process isn't very transparent, and they've had the same people on there for quite a number of years. So there really isn't a lot of ways to get input there. And we want to start having input in other places. I saw something for one of the regional health districts in the paper. They were looking for a member of the board, a new board member, and they were asking doctors and everyone else related to the health field to apply. And I thought, wait a minute. Why don't they have a patient on this board? So we are going to start probably in the fall going around to these boards and making the case to have a patient on all of these regional boards that make decisions, because we think we should be, we're the ones who are operated upon and everything else, but we're not there when the decisions are being made about our health system. So that's participation, regional and national health bodies and everywhere else that it may be, useful. Voice in decision and policy making, awareness of media and the public, so people who are interested in that can join with us and become part of media campaigns. And change is what we want to happen in the health system, that change for the better. And with the limited amount of funds available, or what they're saying is available these days, I think that we have to come up with not just asking for change, but come up with some pretty clear ideas about what the best things are to be done and what our priorities might be, and that's reflected in our election campaigns. And our slogan, again, nothing about us without us.
Until recently, as you probably know, Canada was still exporting asbestos, and the government was saying, well, it's okay if it's handled correctly, safely, but we're exporting it to countries often where they didn't have the technology or the knowledge or the resources to handle it safely. And luckily now that has stopped, and Canada has finally signed a UN convention saying that they do agree that it's unsafe. But it's still around, and 100,000 people a year dying from that kind of cancer is way too many. There shouldn't be any, but that's predicated on people in other countries where they don't have a lot of resources being able to remove it safely. In Canada, there's still people dying, but it's mainly those people who worked as miners or wives who wash the clothes of the miners every day also get it. We're funded in several different ways. Some of our funding comes from the pharmaceutical industry. Some of our funding comes from private donations and other corporate donations. And Mona has been applying for various sources of funds. For example, we're working on with Trillium on a proposal to them. One thing that we want to do is really diversify our funding so that we are not reliant on any one or two or three funders. We probably have about 10 or 12 funders right now, so I think that's fairly healthy, but we could always use more and more from more diverse sources. I haven't managed yet to meet with Rocco because when I was in Toronto, he was on trips across the country because he's actually, as you know, he's meeting with organizations in various parts of the country. So we agreed that we'd have a telephone meeting, and we did talk on the phone for a half an hour, and agreed going forward that we would look at ways that we could collaborate. For example, there may be times that we could do joint submissions to PCODER for prostate cancer, new prostate cancer drugs. By the time he and I met, we had already both put out surveys for Zytiga, which was the last one that we did. So at that point, because the questions on our surveys were different, we couldn't really easily do a joint submissions, but we are looking at that. I always used to say no duplication, no duplication. We need to communicate more. We're a small population in a vast country, and often we find out first what's going on in the United States or elsewhere before we do in another part of Canada. So duplication is really easy to happen because we don't know. But I was at a meeting at one point and someone said, let's not talk about duplication. Let's talk about unnecessary duplication. And I think there's a difference there. Because the country is so large and the populations are so diverse and the healthcare systems are provincial and different, we may have some necessary duplication where someone says, wow, look what's going on in Alberta. We're going to copy that and adjust it, and we're going to do exactly the same thing in Nova Scotia. That's duplication, but maybe it's necessary duplication because people in Nova Scotia are not getting that information. One thing I'd like to clarify is that We look at ourselves as the third rung of the stool. The first rung is the fundraising one, where many of the larger organizations in the country, cancer organizations in the country, are raising funds to fund research, which we really need. The second rung is service, providing services to newly diagnosed patients, providing services to patients as they go through treatment, and then helping them get back on their feet, helping them deal with financial issues that happened, and everything that we think of, survivorship services. We are not doing those, and we are not fundraising for research. What we are doing is trying to build up a large group of patients and survivors who, because of their own experiences with the system, want to see the system change for it to improve. And they may be working on really specific issues relating to one cancer, or they may want to work on systemic issues such as wait times and how do we get those down? What makes sense? How can we prevent some things from happening that have happened to us in the system? And I think that if you look at that, in conjunction, that's the third kind of leg of the stool, because there are certain things we need to change, and they become harder to change because of economic issues, and sometimes because of who's in government, and because of our healthcare system being so different from province to province, and issues with different drugs being available in different provinces, in different wait times. When I was working in breast cancer, we did a research study on breast cancer wait times in Canada. And it was between provinces and territories. It wasn't even comparing apples and oranges. It was comparing apples and hubcaps. We could not do any tables or charts. Everything just had to be descriptive. When Canada was federated, the Articles of Confederation gave things like foreign affairs and defense to the federal government, and it gave health care and education to the provinces. And Stephen Harper is very much of a constitutionalist. So he has pulled the whole federal government back from being involved in health care. And if you see, and also he doesn't meet with the premiers. I mean, we can see that he just doesn't meet with them. And so the premiers have actually formed a group called the Council of the Federation, and they have been working on healthcare issues without the involvement of the federal government. They have gotten involved, and you may have read about this in the newspaper, but the Council of the Federation, which is the provincial premiers and territorial premiers, have gotten involved in things like bulk purchasing of drugs. This is something that is going to increase. Right now they've been not doing cancer drugs, they've been doing arthritis drugs and drugs like that, but it will increase to reduce their costs. We're going to try and provide on our website a fairly comprehensive section on what does it mean to patients, what does bulk purchasing mean to patients, especially if it's only one supplier, and it's only one drug per indication. So that'll be happening. No one is doing that work right now, but we know, I think we know that as long as Stephen Harper is Prime Minister, there won't be a change in that withdrawal from healthcare, education, anything else that in the Constitution, as it was signed by the fathers in Charlottetown all those years ago, that there won't be changes in federal government's withdrawal from healthcare. What really has happened over the last 2 or 3 decades has made a mockery of the Canadian Health Act, which talks about equality, portability, and all of those things that where healthcare is supposed to be the same across the country. We haven't taken a position on as an organization on the privatization of healthcare. I think, though, from a common sense point of view, the doctors and nurses and other healthcare workers who are going to work, if it was legalized, who would be working in those private pay-for-service companies would be taking away healthcare service providers from the public system. And that is a real problem. If you had the money, you could walk right in. If you didn't have the money, the lines would be longer. And I think we've seen this in the fact of MRI clinics right across the river in Gatineau, whereas people here are waiting for months and months sometimes, or a year or more. So I guess personally, our board hasn't discussed that issue, but personally I'm not for privatization because of that, because we have a limited number of healthcare workers, and if they go into the private system, what's left for the people who can't afford to pay? I mean, there are places which are tinkering with it, provinces that are tinkering with it, and that'll probably increase. If you're interested in that and you feel strongly against it, the Ontario Health Coalition, which is one of our partner groups, is working almost full-time on the whole idea against privatization, and they're also working against the public-private partnerships where for-profit companies build hospitals and rent them out to the public hospital authorities. So that's very complex, but they've done a lot of work on it, and they have a lot of documentation on their website about privatization. Monique Bégin had a really good whip hand, and if any of the provinces got out of line in terms of trying to privatize something, she would take that amount of money away from them in terms of what the federal government gave to them. And I think we need another person like that as health minister, for sure.